Hey, we're back. We've got ourselves something a little bit different today. I know we do a lot of deck box reviews on this particular channel. Every now and then, though, we will cross over into other little things. This one still is very much within the trading card realm, though. This is a big old set of dice. This is not just a dice bag, although this obviously is a dice bag. But this is a dice set that is made specifically for Magic the Gathering. A lot of the dice sets that I've done before are sort of like this, where you get just kind of like a little 7-piece set, and usually you get your 12-sided dice, your 20, your 4-sided. This is mostly for Dungeons and Dragons, and if you were to use them for Magic the Gathering as counters or tokens or something like that, they work fine. There's nothing wrong with them. You can get them to work for whatever you need, but these are specifically made for Magic the Gathering players. And here, we'll go ahead and pour these all out, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. A whole bunch of dice here. I believe there's about 50 pieces here. And here we go. We've got our two 20-sided spin-down counter dice, which are basically just 20-sided dice. So those are nice and attractive looking. I'll set you aside. And then we have a series of other dice. Most of these, of course, they look like 6-sided dice. But if you're taking a quick, close look here, you will see that these are not your average dice. Let me pull one up here. As you can see, these actually have counters on them. You can see there, whenever you're playing Magic the Gathering, if you've been playing Magic for any length of time, you know that sometimes certain effects come into play where it's like, this creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn, or gets a permanent +1/+1 counter, etc., that sort of stuff. Well, these dice specifically denote that. As you can see, it says +1/+1. Here you've got +4/+4, +2/+2, and so on. And it has all this. It goes all the way up to +6/+6. And we've got a number of dice that do that here. So if you're running a deck and it's one of those longer games and you've got a whole bunch of different monsters out there, if you needed to, you could use all of these dice to put little counters on the various creatures so you could know exactly where their power and where their toughness is at. So that's actually a pretty nice little thing to have there. And that's what all of these particular dice do here. In fact, I've got one more, right? Yep, we got one more. So you get a whole bunch of dice that can do that, and you can just kind of set them on top of your cards. And so that way you'll know who's got +1/+1, who's +2/+2, etc. Now, sometimes you might think, well, wait a minute. Sometimes you weaken a monster. How am I going to keep track of that? Should I use these? Well, you could, but it might get a little confusing. You'd want something with a minus on them. That's where these come into play. Now, of course, these are white, so it's a little harder to see here on the camera. But these are basically the exact opposite of these. Instead of doing +1/+1, these are -1, -1, -3, -3, and so forth, all the way up to -6. And again, you get a number of these, so just in case somebody does some sort of big ability that weakens all of your monsters, or if you weaken your opponent's monsters, if they don't have a way to properly keep track of that, you can just go and start sticking these on their cards and be like, hey, okay, that's -1, -1, that's -3, and so forth. So pretty darn handy there as far as being able to keep track of what monsters are at what toughness and what strength and so forth. So very handy dice there. And then you may think, well, wait a minute, there's more to that. And you can already see what's coming here. As you can see, this particular die says flying on it. Again, whenever you activate certain abilities or whatnot, you may give a particular creature flying, or you may give them death touch, or indestructible, or lifelink, or hexproof, or reach, all these different things. And so what you would want to do is you would want to have a way to actually note that this particular creature has this ability, either for just the turn or for an extended period of time. And so having dice like this that you can use as markers can make the game much easier to navigate, because you don't have to go and remember, especially if you've got a whole lineup of creatures there. You got 8 creatures on the field. This one may have flying, this one may not have flying, this one may have reach, this one may have indestructible. Sometimes it's kind of hard to keep track of that. Some people I've seen will just use like little pieces of paper or something, or they'll use just regular dice and be like, okay, this is to denote that my creature has flying or whatever. Well, this kind of takes the guesswork out of that, just in case, the game goes a little long and maybe you forget that that particular creature had that particular ability or disability in some case. And so with this particular die, you can just go ahead and say, okay, well, my creature has flying now, so plop that right down on my monster, and it's now has flying until I remove that dice or it leaves the field. Same thing here with a few other abilities here. Here's a different one. This one has double strike. This one has first strike, menace, trample, haste, and vigilance. And so you can kind of go through all of these, and you've got a number of these here, and they all note the different types of abilities that your creatures may have. which can be very, very handy because, like I said, in an extended game, sometimes, as you're just kind of going along, you may lose, track of who has what, and these dice will definitely get you there. And again, like I said, you get a number of these. How many of these do we actually have here? Let's see. We've got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. Now, of course, they're not all the same. Some of them have trample, some of them have reach next group, so they are a little bit different there. But you basically get half and half of each of these. So if you've got, like I said, a number of creatures, you can kind of just go into your dice bag here, and you can see exactly what it is that each of these dice is going to note whenever you put them there on your cards. And I find these, as far as them being markers or anything like that, or things to help keep track of what's going on in the game, I actually think these could be very, very helpful. Because there have been games, honestly, it's been a little while since I've played Paper Magic. I've been playing a lot of Magic the Gathering online, or, whatever it's called nowadays. It's been a little bit since I've even been on there. But whenever you're playing Paper Magic, again, sometimes it can be a little difficult to keep track of all of that stuff, especially when you're in a, when you're playing a deck or you're using a deck that has a number of different creatures that has all sorts of different abilities that you need to keep track of, because over time, as the game progresses, especially if it's a longer game, it's happened at times where I'm like, wait a minute, did this creature have trample, or did it not have trample? Did I give it something? What did I do here? And that could be a real pain in the butt. I'm sure a handful of you have run into that situation where you're just like, oh, I'll remember. And then, 5 or 6 turns goes by and you're like, wait a minute, did this happen? What was going on then? And then you have to go back through your discard pile and try and figure out, when did I do this? How did I do this? And then of course your opponent may actually say, well, if you can't remember, then your creature does not have that. And they'd kind of be right to call you out on that, because if you can't remember what you gave or didn't give your creature, and you can't go back through the stack and figure out what is going on, then they have an argument there. And sometimes that can cost you the game. So it's always good to have these little types of counters around. I think that they're actually really, really nice. The dice themselves, they do roll like regular 6-sided dice. Not that you would normally use these as 6-sided dice. Technically you could. Like, say, for instance, if this is all you had, they are still basically 6-sided dice. You could still roll a 1, a 2, and all that. So if you needed to roll them for just that thing, there you go. You can roll a 2, you roll a 6, all that stuff. For those of you who may be wondering, we will do a little bit of a measurement here as far as how much they weigh. Let me bring out my little scale here, and let's get it turned on just to give you an idea of how much each of these weigh. And this right here, we're going with grams. There we go. This weighs 4.6 grams. That's for a 6-sided. I believe the other 6-sided should be about that same amount. 4.54. Okay, so they're within variance. So about 4.5 to 4.6 as far as how much these little guys weigh. Oh, that one's even less. That one's 4.45. So there is some variance there. But again, for the counters, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. Same thing with these, since they're not necessarily meant to be dice that you would actually roll. And for those who are curious, we will do the 20-sided. 5.48 grams and 5.34. So there is a little bit of variance there, but they are about all the same weight there. So as far as these being useful to a Magic the Gathering player, I think they would be. It really depends on who it is that you're playing, or who is in the market for this sort of thing. Some people have kind of just already thought of a system that works for them, where it's like, well, I already know how to keep track of these things, and I don't have to worry about dice and that sort of stuff. Plus, if I'm carrying dice with me, that's just one more extra thing I have to worry about. Well, if you're a big-time Magic the Gathering player or a Pokemon player or whatnot, chances are you already carry with you at least a few dice or a few markers or something, especially with Pokemon because they have damage counters. So I would say, would this actually be helpful for somebody that plays Magic or plays Pokemon? I would say yes. The dice themselves, like I said, they're fairly good quality. They're reasonably lightweight. They're not super heavy or anything. And they have a very, practical use to them. So as far as these being worth it, I would say if you decided to invest in something like this, I think it's a good investment. I really do. Especially if you're the kind of person who likes keeping track of all this stuff and doesn't want to use little pieces of paper or something like that. Or I know back in the day, say like 20 years ago or so, we had these little kind of glass objects, like little orbs that we would use with flat bottoms that we would use as counters, and we would just put those on our cards. Some of you all may remember them. Some of you may even still have stuff like that. But I know that's what I used as far as counters to denote, well, I'm +1/+1 or +2/+2 or whatever. These kind of take the guesswork out of that, because whatever, your creature may be, if it's +3/+3, just plop that right down on there, and there you go. Now you know it's +3/+3. So yeah, I would say 6 points. These dice are perfectly fine. I see nothing really wrong with them. They should work just fine. As far as the cost, I don't like putting the cost in the videos because they can change a little bit, but I will put an affiliate link down in the description. And again, full disclosure, if you do buy this particular dice set, or any product for that matter, using any of my affiliate links, I do get a little bit of a kickback there. And again, this was sent over to me for free in exchange for an honest review. I think these dice are fine. I see nothing wrong with them. They do have a very practical use. The only negative thing is going to be the overall size, because of course this bag is pretty big because it does need to house all these dice. And let's fully load this sucker up. And if you want, I'll actually even weigh all of them here with the dice bag. As you can see, it's a pretty good size compared to, say, like a standard deck box you got here. That's kind of what you're looking at here. Let me get a little more in frame there. Yeah, that's what you're looking at there as far as a standard size deck box. So it is a bit bulky. Let me break out my scale here again, and let's see if we can get a measurement as to how heavy this is. It doesn't feel, I mean, it does feel a little heavy, but let's see if I can get a roundabout number here for you. Let's see if I can get that kind of mushed down there without falling over. Just under 240 grams total weight there. So it does have a little bit of weight to it overall. Of course, if you wanted, you don't have to bring every single one of these dice out. You could always just, say, for instance, if you're going to a local tournament and you may only need like 2 or 3 of these, yeah, just grab like 2 or 3 of each of these. You don't have to get a whole ton of them. You can get, say, half the dice, and just take those with you and leave the others at home. And so you may just go out with something like this instead. You don't have to bring all of them with you, because of course with all of them that's a nice big bulk there, but you can just leave these at home, just bring these with you. In fact, if you were just to go ahead and grab just, say, this many, would I be able to fit them in a smaller dice bag? Let's see. Our 220 down spin down counters. It'll be a tight fit, I'll tell you that. But we might be able to get them to fit in a smaller one. Look at that, super tight fit. Oh, but look at that, they fit. There you go. If you really needed to, you could kind of, just take just a handful, stick them in an old school, smaller dice bag like that, which is definitely smaller. And so you could get them to work that way. So yeah, I think these dice are good. They're fine. They do have a practical use. It's really just up to you if you're going to want to buy something like this. To me, these are more of a quality of life sort of thing, just to kind of, make keeping track of the +1s and the -1s and all the various effects that Magic can throw at you sometimes. So definitely more of a quality of life type of thing, a bit more of a luxury. But if you do play a lot and you do find yourself in a situation like this where you're constantly having to keep track of this stuff, I'd say it's worth the investment. Anyways, thanks for checking out the video, guys. I really appreciate it. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, share the video all you want. Again, affiliate link is going to be down in the description if you decided you want to try this product. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.